Hello. Welcome to English for Everybody. This lesson is about English verbs.
Section 1 of the nature of verbs in general. The nature of verbs in general, and that in all languages, is that they are the most difficult things in the grammar. Verbs are divided into active, passive, and neuter, and also into regular, irregular, and defective. To these divisions we beg to add another, verbs comic. A verb active implies an agent and an object acted upon, as to love. I love Wilhelmina Stubbs. Here I am the agent, that is, the lover, and Wilhelmina Stubbs is the object acted upon, or the beloved object. A verb passive expresses the suffering, feeling, or undergoing of something, and therefore implies an object acted upon, and an agent by which it is acted upon, as to be loved. Wilhelmina Stubbs is loved by me. A verb neuter expresses neither action nor passion, but a state of being, as I bounce, I lie. Auxiliary or helping verbs. By the way, we marvel that the New Englanders do not call their servants auxiliaries instead of helps, are those by the help of which we are chiefly enabled to conjugate our verbs in English. They are do, be, have, shall, will, may, can, with their variations, and let and must, which have no variation. Let, however, when it is anything but a helping verb, as for instance when it signifies to hinder, makes lettest and letteth. The phrase this house to let, generally used instead of to be let, meaning in fact the reverse of what is intended to convey, is really a piece of comic English. To verbs belong number, person, mood, and tense. These may be called the properties of a verb. Section 2 of number and person. Verbs have two numbers, the singular and the plural, as I fiddle, we fiddle, etc. In each number there are three persons, as singular first person, I love, singular second person, thou lovest, singular third person, he loves, plural first person, we love, plural second person, ye or you love, plural third person, they love. Section 3 of moods and participles. Mood or mode is a particular form of the verb, or a certain variation which it undergoes, showing the manner in which the being, action, or passion is represented. The moods of verbs are 5: the indicative, the imperative, the potential, the subjunctive, and the infinitive. The indicative mood simply points out or declares a thing, as he teaches, he is taught, or it asks a question, as does he teach, is he taught. The imperative mood commands, exhorts, entreats, or permits. The potential mood implies possibility or liberty, power, will, or obligation, as a waiter may be honest, you may stand upon truth or lie, I can filch, he would cousin, they should learn. The subjunctive mood is used to represent a thing as done conditionally, and is preceded by a conjunction expressed or understood, and accompanied by another verb, as if the skies should fall, larks would be caught. Were I to punch your head, I should serve you right. That is, if I were to punch your head. The infinitive mood expresses a thing generally, without limitation, and without any distinction of number or person, as to quarrel, to fight, to be licked. The participle is a peculiar form of the verb, and is so called because it participates in the properties both of a verb and of an adjective, as, having uplifted a stave, they departed. The participles are three: the present or active, the perfect or passive, and the compound perfect, as, I felt nervous at the thought of popping the question, but that once popped, I was not sorry for having popped it. The worst of popping the question is that the report is always sure to get abroad. Section 4 of the tenses. Tense is the distinction of time, and consists of 6 divisions, namely the present, the imperfect, the perfect, the pluperfect, and the first and second future tenses. Time is also distinguished by a forelock, scythe, and hourglass, but the youthful reader must bear in mind that these things are not to be confounded with tenses. The present tense, as its name implies, represents an action or event occurring at the present time, as, I lament, rogues prosper, the mob rules. The imperfect tense represents a past action or event, but which, like a mutton chop, may be either thoroughly done or not thoroughly done. Were it meat, we should say underdone. As, when I was a little boy, some 15 years ago, my mammy doted on me, Lawk, she made me quite a show. When our reporter left, the honourable gentleman was still on his legs. The perfect tense declares a thing to have been done at some time, though an indefinite one antecedent to the present time. That, however, which the perfect tense represents as done is completely, or as we say of a green one when he is humbugged by the thimble-rig people, regularly done, as, I have been out on the river, I have caught a crab. The pluperfect tense represents a thing as doubly past, that is, as past previously to some other point of time also past, as, I fell in love before I had arrived at years of discretion. The first future tense represents the action as yet to come, either at a certain or an uncertain time, as, the tailor will send my coat home tomorrow, and when I find it perfectly convenient, I shall pay him. The second future intimates that the action will be completed at or before the time of another future action or event, as, I wonder how many conquests I shall have made by tomorrow morning. The consideration of the tenses suggests various moral reflections to the thinking mind. A couple of examples will perhaps suffice. 1. Present, though moderate fruition, is preferable to splendid but contingent futurity, i.e., a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. 2. Imperfect nutrition is less to be deprecated than privation of aliment. A new way of putting an old proverb, which we need not again insert, respecting half a loaf. Section 6. The conjugation of regular verbs active. Regular verbs active are known by their forming their imperfect tense of the indicative mood and their perfect participle by adding to the verb ed, or d only when the verb ends in e, as present, I reckon, imperfect, I reckoned, perfect participle, reckoned. Present, I realize, imperfect, I realized, perfect participle, realized. Passive. Verbs passive are said to be regular when their perfect participle is formed by the addition of d or ed to the verb, as from the verb to bless is formed the passive I am blessed, I was blessed, I shall be blessed, etc. The conjugation of a passive verb is nothing more than the repetition of that of the auxiliary to be, the perfect participle being added. And now, having cut the regular verbs, as Alexander did the Gordian knot, instead of conjugating them, let us proceed to consider the irregular verbs. Irregular verbs are those of which the imperfect tense and the perfect participle are not formed by adding d or ed to the verb, as present, I blow; imperfect, I blew; perfect participle, blown. Great liberties are taken with the irregular verbs, insomuch that in the mouths of some persons divers of them become doubly irregular in the formation of their participles. Among such irregular verbs we may enumerate the following: present, burst; imperfect, bust; perfect or passive participle, busted; present, catch; imperfect, cotch; perfect or passive participle, cotched; present, come; imperfect, kim; perfect or passive participle, cummed. Of defective verbs. There are some verbs, defective or rum verbs, which are used only in some of their moods and tenses. The principal of them are these: can, imperfect, could, no perfect or passive participle; may, imperfect, might, no perfect or passive participle; shall, imperfect, should, no perfect or passive participle; will, imperfect, would, no perfect or passive participle; must, imperfect, must, no perfect or passive participle; ought, imperfect, ought, no perfect or passive participle; no present, imperfect, quoth, no perfect or passive participle.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.